All right. Well, welcome everybody to Fireside by the Riverside. Our topic tonight is self and magnanimity. And you might be curious what those two have to do with each other, but we're going to explore that a little bit tonight. And
I'm gonna lay down my burden down by the riverside, down by that river, down by that riverside. Gonna lay down my burden down by that riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. No more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. Lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Down by the riverside. Down by the riverside. I'm lay down my sword and shield down by the riverside. Study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more. No more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Study war no more. Study war no more.
Napodika mi barangay, namaboko na Yesu, namaboko na Yesu, namaboko na Yesu. Napodika mi barangay, namaboko na Yesu, namitumbisa Yesu. Study war no more, 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 study war no more.
I'm gonna put on my long night robe by the riverside, down by the riverside, down by the riverside. I'm gonna put on my long night robe down by the riverside. Study war no more.
Study war no more, 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 study war no more.
so I'm going to hand it over because I don't know, there may be some folks on there who aren't so familiar with the Baha'i Faith. So hand it over to my guys to introduce say a few words about what is this Baha'i Faith here. Guys, you want to say a few things?
Sure. All right. Good to see everybody again. So for those of you who might be new to the Baha'i Faith, you're hearing about this for the first time, just a quick introduction is that the Baha'i Faith is the youngest of the world's religions. It began a little less than 200 years ago in what is now known as Iran, but what was known as Persia at the time. The founder of the Baha'i Faith is called Baha'u'lláh. The title means the glory of God in English. And some of the core principles of the Baha'i Faith, if there was one word to sum it up, capture the essence of the teachings, it would be unity. And that unity is taught on many levels, including the unity of God, the belief that there is one God, and that perfection is unity, and the belief in the unity of religions, that all religions come from that same source, and all the different prophets of the past are all part of one progressive revelation from the same source. And also the unity of mankind, which manifests itself through social justice, through the equality of men and women, through the abrogation of all forms of racial prejudice, class prejudice, and things of that sort. And the Baha'is all around the world are engaged in serving their communities in lots of different capacities. And Alexander will talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, Baha'is manifest those teachings in, like Luke's saying, in many ways of service. Some of them are, go for all ages. So we have some of the children's classes that are for the youngest parts of the population. JY, junior youth, for kind of early teenage years, and study circles. And all this is working at a grassroots level to promote unity and create vibrant communities.
All right, very good. Thank you, guys. I'll be calling on your help a little bit later as well. So let's get into today's topic. So, I think we've all been going through this lockdown period all over the world, but certainly here in New Zealand. And I think that this period of lockdown, certainly for me, has been a time for reflection, about ourselves, about kind of life and everything, really. I think it's also interesting that this pandemic has occurred around the time of lots of interesting things like Christian Lent and Easter. The Baha'i fasting period also happened during the month of March. And now we're in the Muslim month of Ramadan as well, so another fasting period. And in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the springtime. And we've also just emerged from the most important of the Baha'i Holy Day celebrations, Rezvan. And so all of those sort of events this time of the year, it naturally makes our thoughts kind of turn towards transformation and renewal. Transformation and renewal of the individual on one hand, us as individuals, but also transformation of us collectively as a society. And so all that's been sort of going on in the back of my mind as I was preparing for today. But I think the universe was telling me something, because this next passage that I wanted to share with you is came to me from a couple of different sources over this past week, and so it kind of prompted me saying that I probably just need to put that out there, and let's explore it a little bit together. So it's this passage which is well, here it is. So the beginning of magnanimity is when man expendeth his wealth on himself, on his family, and on the poor among his brethren in his faith. And I just thought that was really interesting, because what struck me about it is, because normally when we think about something like magnanimity, which sort of means generosity, or that kind of meaning, usually you think about generosity, we think about others, and yet here in this one, Baha'u'lláh starts with self being the beginning of magnanimity. And so, it just made me wonder, why is this? What's he trying to tell us here? And of course, we could also have a long discussion here about what does wealth mean in this regard. But let's try to do one thing at a time. So first, this point about self being the beginning of generosity. And I think it might have to do with this, that it's not just about being selfish, but it's like when you get into an airline, and not a lot of us have been getting into airplanes recently, but when we did, you remember the safety instructions were that we're told to, before we help others, we need to put the oxygen mask on ourselves first. And I guess the advice there, maybe that's what Baha'u'lláh is saying, is before we can put ourselves in a position to be of service to others, we have to make sure that we're capable of being able to do that. And so that means we have to take care of ourselves first, but with the intent of being of service to others. Okay, so then I guess then we have to start to think, well, okay, what does that mean? What does that mean, taking care of ourselves? What does taking care of ourselves look like? And for that, we first need to just understand who we are and what we need and what leads to well-being. You know, in other words, what is our oxygen, right? And so just like this passage here says, man should know his own self and recognize that recognize that which leadeth unto loftiness or lowliness, glory or abasement, wealth or poverty. Right? So now we have to get on this path of understanding who we really are and what is it that we need and what leads to those positive things. So maybe I can get one of the guys there. Could you guys read this out, please? You guys able to read that?
In man there are two natures, his spiritual or higher nature and his material or lower nature. In one he approaches God, in the other he lives for the world alone. Signs of both of these natures are to be found in man. In his material aspect, he expresses untruth, cruelty, and injustice. All these are the outcomes of his lower nature. The attributes of his divine nature are shown forth in love, mercy, kindness, truth, and justice, one and all being expressions of his higher nature. Every good habit, every noble quality belongs to man's spiritual nature, whereas all his imperfections and sinful actions are born of his material nature.
Okay, so this is interesting, right? This says that as we think about who we are, it says that we have two natures. We have a higher self and a lower self, kind of a spiritual side and an animal side. And so clearly there's something there about learning to develop that higher self, that spiritual side of ourselves. But you know, it also, of course, I think I take this to heart as well. While we're working on ourselves, we're working on that transformation, we also need to make sure we're not being too hard on ourselves, right? This is a quote here. It sometimes happens that negative feelings about oneself become an obstacle to successfully passing one's spiritual tests by making it difficult to believe in one's own nobility. So while we're working on ourselves and we're trying to nurture our higher selves, we need to also be forgiving with ourselves and just not beat ourselves up too much, right? Along this journey. And here, that word noble, I think, is an important word, right? And we're told in the Baha'i writings, this, Luke, could you read this out, or Alexander?
O son of spirit, noble have I created thee, yet thou hast abased thyself. Rise then unto that for which thou wast created.
Right, so this is pretty powerful, right? Baha'u'lláh here assuring us that we are noble beings. And we can never forget this, regardless of any mistakes we make along the way. We need to remember that we are noble beings. Indeed, I think this passage also goes a little bit further. Shoghi, do you want to read that?
O my servants, could ye apprehend with what wonders of my munificence and bounty I have willed to entrust your souls? Ye would, of a truth, rid yourselves of attachment to all created things, and would gain a true knowledge of your own selves, a knowledge which is the same as the comprehension of my own being.
Yeah, so this one's interesting too. Basically, the way I think of this is it says that really we're made of stardust, right? We're made of the divine. So truly understanding ourselves is a way to help us to understand the divine and get closer to the divine. And so this passage here, we're asked to read the book of one's own self. Wherefore put thy hand into thy bosom, and then stretch it forth with power, and behold, thou shalt find it a light unto all the world. So in other words, we have to study ourselves, our higher selves, our divine selves, so that then we can reach within ourselves and become a light unto all the world. So now we've explored a little bit about the nature of ourselves, and about this higher self, and kind of the journey, that's a journey along the way. I got this video this morning as I was kind of finalizing all this, and I couldn't resist but to share it with you guys. And I don't think it was intended to be some great moral lesson. I think it was more just a cute video. But actually, as I watched it, I realized actually it's related here. Yeah, it's a bit of an example of how the self can serve others. So I'm going to have to switch over to show you here. Bear with me for a moment. This is Farmer Nabil. Telling us about
My name is Nabil, and today we're planting potatoes. When sprouting potatoes, you need to make sure they have eyes here, all over the potato. See, here's an eye, and here's some eyes, but these dots all around it aren't eyes. So then you need to cut up your potatoes into large chunks, and make sure you get a good portion of the eyes. So I'll cut it like in the middle.
Go ahead.
These are the 3-ish types and sizes of pots. You can get a small one like this, but the smaller the pot, like the smaller the potato. So you need to get your soil, which is from here. Put the soil in and fill it right almost to the top. So once we've got it, we take a potato, create one massive hole, and then stick one inside it on like one side, and the other on this side. Then cover lightly, and then put a little more dirt. Then we'll need to water it. So you want to get it until the water seeps through the bottom. These are potatoes that have been growing for a couple months. It's not ready to harvest when it's like this. You'll know your thing is ready to harvest when it's dead like this, and you can see some like mold. I'll show what a harvest looks like. You can already see a potato there. And then I would flip it, and this was the original potato planted. You can see that it's just like skin. These are the harvests. Like usually there's around 4 or 5. Then you can reuse the soil for other potatoes. And now you have your potatoes, and you can wash them and then bake them. And you see that the food center potatoes and the other store potatoes here are around this size, and I'm happy to say that I beat them. So thank you.
All right, so thank you, Farmer Nabil, for that, teaching us how to grow potatoes. But I thought, isn't that interesting, how the potato, you know, sort of sacrifices itself and offers itself up for to produce 4 more potatoes out of that. And so there's something there about transforming ourselves in order to be of service to others. And then of course there's this, one of my favorite passages. So who would like to read this one? Alexander, maybe?
The more we search for ourselves, the less likely we are to find ourselves. And the more we search for God and to serve our fellow men, the more profoundly we will become acquainted with ourselves, and the more inwardly assured. This is one of the great spiritual laws of life.
Yeah, so you see there's just this interesting relationship, right? As you think about it more and more, this relationship between the self and otherliness and the spiritual path. I think it's just profound to meditate on that. I wanted to share this as well. This is a beautiful Chinese proverb. And Eric, could I get Amy, would you mind pronouncing this for us in beautiful Chinese? Would you be able to unmute yourself to do that?
海纳百川.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, 海纳百川. So kind of roughly translated, the sea takes in all rivers. So, I suppose this also has a meaning of magnanimity. And maybe that's something we can talk about later, what it means to everybody. But I guess literally the proverb is the sea takes in all rivers. In other words, the ocean or the sea is so magnanimous that it accepts all rivers, regardless of where they've come from and regardless of the purity of the water, of what path those different rivers have traveled, but they all go to the same place and they're all accepted lovingly by the sea. And I think it could also have another meaning, which is a message around humility, right? That the sea also has to have humility. It has to lower itself below all the rivers in order to receive them all. And of course, the message around there's many paths to get to that kind of destination. You know, we're all traveling in our own spiritual path, and there's lots of different ways to get to that same sort of destination. And that sort of led to this next poem, which is also a favorite from Khalil Gibran. And this poem takes the perspective of one of those rivers as they're flowing to the sea. And again, here we'll see this this profound, beautiful relationship between the individual and the collective. It may be easier if I just read it out. So the name of the poem is Fear. And it goes like this. It's said that before entering the sea, a river trembles with fear. She looks back at the path she has traveled, from the peaks of the mountains, the long, winding road crossing forests and villages. And in front of her, she sees an ocean so vast that to enter there seems nothing more than to disappear forever. But there's no other way. The river cannot go back. Nobody can go back. To go back is impossible in existence. The river needs to take the risk of entering the ocean, because only then will fear disappear, because that's where the river will know. It's not about disappearing into the ocean, but of becoming the ocean. So we see this beautiful, profound relationship between the individual and the collective, between the created and the creator, the individual and the divine, the universe, we're separate, yet we're one. We are drops of one ocean. We are but a drop of water, yet the ocean is within us. And along the banks of that river grows reeds. And if we think of ourselves as a reed, then here too we can study ourselves and work on ourselves and fashion ourselves so as to remove the lower self, to blow out the pith of self, so that we can become a clear channel for the divine spirit, so that we can become an instrument of love to inspire others along their journey towards the sea. O God, make me a hollow reed from which the pith of self hath been blown, so that I may become as a clear channel through which thy love may flow to others.
Oh God, make me a hollow reed from which the pith of self hath been blown, that I may become a pure channel through which thy love may flow unto others. Oh God, make me a hollow reed from which the pith of self hath been blown, that I may become a pure channel through which thy love may flow unto us. unto others. Make me a hollow reed, through which thy love may flow unto others. Make me a hollow reed, through which thy love may flow. Through which thy love may flow unto others. Yeah. Make me a hollow reed, through which thy love may flow. Through which thy love may flow unto others. Yeah. Make me a hollow. I want you to make me a hollow reed. Yeah. Thy love may flow unto others. Come on and make me a hollow reed, through which thy love may flow. Through which thy love come on, make me a hollow reed. Yeah. Hollow reed, through which thy love may flow. Through which thy love make me a hollow reed. Make me a hollow reed. Make me and mold me into what you want me to be, Lord. Through which thy love may flow unto others. Make me a hollow reed.
Which brings us then to this prayer by our friend Baha'i Kevin Locke. Kevin's Lakota, and he's a master of the Northern Plains flute, as well as a master hoop dancer and storyteller. And so maybe we can take that hollow reed now, and it's been turned into a flute, and listen to one of the masters of the Northern Plains flute play that for us.
Great Spirit, whose voice I hear in the wind, and whose breath gives life to all the world. Hear me, I am small and weak. One of your many children am I. Let me walk in beauty, and make my eyes always behold the red and purple sunrise. Make my hands respect the things you have made, and my ears sharp to hear your voice. Make me wise, that I may know the many things you have hidden in every leaf and rock. I seek strength, not to be greater than my brother, but to fight my greatest enemy, myself. Make me always ready come before you. Clean hands and straight eyes, so that when life fades like the fading sunset, my spirit may come before you without shame.
So we end where we began, that the beginning of magnanimity is when we expend wealth, true wealth, on himself, on his family, and on the poor among his brethren in his faith. Thank you for joining us today. And if you want to know more, here is a few more links where you can get additional information.